4 lessons on cognitive distortions. Try these lessons over the next 4 days, doing one lesson each day. Cognitive distortions are flawed ways of thinking. Many individuals develop these distorted ways of thinking about themselves or about situations when they are very young. These ways of thinking are harmful to people because they lead to negative, hurtful emotions. They may lead a person to hurting him or herself or to hurting others. Read and think about 2 of these cognitive distortions every day for 4 days, and consider how they might be true for you and how they might be affecting your relations with your friends or family members. After learning about these cognitive distortions for 4 days, retake the self-surveys you have already taken. Lesson 1. Filtering and Catastrophizing. Filtering is a cognitive disorder in which someone only notices the negative aspects of a situation and disregards the positive. If you experience this cognitive disorder, you might challenge your thinking by trying to notice some positive aspects of a situation. For instance, if some difficult events happen in your day, instead of labeling the day as a terrible one, consider some good parts of the day that occurred. Also, ask a friend or acquaintance for their perspective on the way you are regarding a situation and their ideas for a more positive perspective. Catastrophizing is when someone predicts or assumes that the worst will happen. For instance, if someone doesn't do well on an assignment or test, they assume that they will need to drop out of school and that they will have no decent career. If you experience catastrophizing, ask a friend or acquaintance to help you challenge your thinking and to offer you some more realistic ideas. Also, ask a friend or acquaintance for their perspective on the way you are fearing a situation and their ideas for a more hopeful perspective. Lesson 2. Always being right and shoulds. The cognitive distortion of always being right means that it is never okay to be wrong, and that being right is most important above all else. If you have this cognitive distortion, realize that others are okay with you being wrong sometimes, and that the relationships you have with others are more important than always being right. The cognitive distortion of shoulds relate to the way in which some people's rules of behavior are so important and that you and others should be judged for not following these rules. If you experience this cognitive distortion, realize that rules are helpful for guiding us and for guiding our relationships, and that they will at times be broken. Lesson 3. Heaven's Reward Fallacy and Fallacy of Change. Heaven's reward fallacy is flawed thinking that your sacrifice must result in a reward. For instance, if you study longer than others, you may consider that you must receive the best grade. Or if you make sacrifices at your work, that you should be rewarded with a raise or a promotion. If you experience this kind of thinking, realize that there may be some good reasons that you did not receive a raise or a promotion, or that you did not get the grade you were hoping for on an assignment or a test. Also, ask a friend or an acquaintance for their perspective on your situation. Fallacy of change thinking is when you think others should change in order to please you. Sometimes it is easy to be bothered by some behaviors in another person that you like, and you think that if they change, you will be happier. If you experience this cognitive distortion, realize that others don't exist to please you and that everyone is imperfect, with ways of being that make them uniquely who they are. Also, talk to a friend or an acquaintance for their perspective on your ideas about wanting someone else to change and your reasons for wanting them to change. Lesson 4, Personalization and All or Nothing Thinking. Personalization means that someone is consistently taking responsibility for a bad situation or thinking that they are to blame for bad things that happen. If you have this cognitive distortion, it helps to realize that bad things just happen and that maybe no one is to blame in some situations. If you experience this cognitive distortion, ask a friend or an acquaintance to challenge your thinking about how you have blamed yourself for some bad situations. All or nothing thinking is a cognitive distortion in which you might think that a certain situation, such as a test or a meeting with someone, is always difficult or bad. It can also be thinking that your performance was either perfect or terrible. If you experience this cognitive distortion, challenge your thinking to consider if there is a more complex way to describe your performance in your work or on a test or assignment, one which acknowledges both the positive and negative aspects. Also, ask a friend or acquaintance for some more realistic ideas about your situation.